Mid-February 1943, Sidi Zid, Tunisia. In the desert haze, a captured M4A1 Sherman tank rolled to a stop. Its white American star still peeked from beneath hurriedly brushed black crosses. Around it gathered officers of Heavy Panzer Battalion 501, notebooks open, voices hushed. The vehicle's name, War Daddy 2, stood faint but readable across its hull. Serial number USA 3067641, built by Lima Locomotive Works, part of Company G, 1st Armored Regiment, 1st Armored Division. For Germany's engineers, this single intact Sherman would become a turning point. Within months, it would ignite doubts about their own designs and expose weaknesses in the foundation of Germany's armored industry. A reconnaissance team drove the prize 350 kilometers to the port of Sfax, 4.5 days across brutal North African terrain. The crew waited for breakdowns that never came. No overheating, no transmission failure, no clogged filters. The tank simply ran, mile after mile, through heat and sand that routinely crippled panzers. At the docks, War Daddy 2 was loaded aboard a freighter bound for Germany. The Army Weapons Office ordered it arrive, intact and operational. Numbers and intelligence reports had hinted at American mass production miracles, but this single machine would make the abstract painfully real. Spring 1943, Kummersdorf Proving Ground, Germany's secret laboratory south of Berlin. The captured tank rolled down from its railcar, now bearing a new license plate, WH058941. Engineers swarmed over it, rulers, stencils, and calipers in hand. Kummersdorf tested everything: guns, transmissions, optics. Now the facility would dissect the M4 Sherman as if it were an alien craft. Technicians scrawled armor angles in chalk, photographed every component, and measured gear teeth with micrometers. Their first surprise came inside the transmission. German tanks relied on straight-cut gears, precise but fragile, screeching under load. The Sherman used herringbone gears, spreading stress evenly. What German factories deemed too complex to mass-produce, American assembly lines stamped out by the thousand. Then came the automotive trials. War Daddy 2 drove obstacle courses while engineers noted fuel use, recorded engine temps, and listened for weakness. When the runs were over, they stripped components again, hunting for wear. They found almost none. The Sherman met or exceeded every benchmark, especially the one-axis cruise dreaded most: operational endurance without constant maintenance. 5 forward speeds, 1 reverse, synchronization from 2nd through 5th meant smooth changes without double clutching. To ordinary U.S. soldiers, this was intuitive. To German crews used to grinding Maybach transmissions, it was sorcery. The Continental R975 radial engine performed flawlessly. Whether hot or cold, desert dust or rain, it ran steady. Filters that would have choked a Panzer's life systems kept breathing clean. At every level, it embodied practical design ahead of perfectionist theory. June 1943, Hillersleben Artillery Range. Armaments Minister Albert Speer arrived, entourage in tow, for a high-profile demonstration. On the line sat Germany's proud creations, the brand-new Panther OSD and the colossal 65-ton Ferdinand tank destroyer, alongside the captured American Interloper. Engines roared. The Sherman climbed the test hill first, its 5-speed gearbox shifting neatly, its 400 horsepower radial humming unbothered. The Panther followed with brute force, barely matching the time and stalling twice between gears. Then came the Ferdinand, and it choked halfway up, dead weight for the recovery crews to drag away under Speer's uneasy gaze. The spectacle embarrassed German industry before its own leadership. Yet 6 days later, Das Reich newspaper published a face-saving story describing the Sherman as a noteworthy product of North American steel works. Behind those sanitized words spread genuine alarm. Through that summer and autumn, War Daddy 2 ran endurance testing far past any previous benchmark, over 2,000 kilometers before needing heavy service, nearly 4 times the range of an early Panther. Transmission losses measured lower than Germany's best, and the synchronized gearbox demanded a fraction of the training. Final drives revealed another humiliation. Panzer final drives inherited from Tiger layouts failed routinely under stress, straight-cut gears cracking under load. Sherman herringbone units survived endless strain. Years later, restorers would open World War II final drives that still worked after decades in storage, proof of generous design margins. By late 1943, internal memos circulated through the Wehrmacht. They admitted what many suspected. America's true strength lay not in thick armor but in industrial maturity. German officers learned an uncomfortable truth. The United States built tanks from the same mindset as automobiles, for ordinary mechanics using everyday tools. Germany built laboratory masterpieces that required artisans on the battlefield. Before the war, the US had tens of millions of civilian drivers and mechanics. In Germany, cars were luxury items. The Volkswagen dream had produced barely 1,000 civilian cars by 1939. That difference shaped the engineering DNA. American factories used interchangeable parts across multiple companies: Ford, Buick, Caterpillar, all building transmissions identical enough to swap with no fitting. German contracts produced subtle variations between manufacturers, parts that often didn't mate. Panther crews faced operating manuals warning, avoid third gear unless absolutely necessary. Turning in reverse risked transmission failure. Sprockets jammed from small stones. Engineers knew it, drivers feared it. The Sherman, by contrast, thrived on indifference. It forgave its drivers' mistakes. By 1944, several captured models reached Kummersdorf: M4A1 with its aircraft-derived radial, M4A2 with twin GM diesels, and M4A3 with the Ford GAA V8 that crews adored. Every version shared the same heartbeat: automotive simplicity and reliability. German analysts were astonished by consistency between factories half a continent apart. The diesel M4A2 impressed them most. While Germany wrestled with fuel shortages, American industry produced diesel Shermans alongside gasoline ones without slowing production. The twin 6046 diesel used less fuel, ran cooler, and could go farther, an irony not lost on German engineers whose own diesel prototypes had died on the drawing board. March 1944, Inspector General Heinz Guderian reported Panther reliability as acceptable. Engines lasting 1,000 kilometers instead of 500 was considered victory. That merely matched one-third of Sherman performance. Then bombing wiped the optimism out. In April 1944, RAF Bomber Command flattened the Maybach engine and ZF gearbox plants. Production froze for 6 months. When it resumed that November, quality plunged. Slave labor assembled tanks with sabotage sewn inside, filters stuffed with cigarette butts, gaskets reversed. American tanks rolled out of Detroit with unionized volunteers earning solid wages, not starving captives defying their masters. The contrast symbolized two industrial civilizations moving in opposite directions. By mid-1944, mechanical attrition was destroying more Panthers than Allied shells. Units were told to rail transport tanks for any move over 100 kilometers. Some formations lost 70% of vehicles to breakdowns. Shermans, meanwhile, blitzed across continents. The U.S. built 49,324 of them, more than all German tanks combined. Lend-Lease shipped thousands to Britain and the Soviet Union, where reports echoed a single refrain: they just kept running. German panzer crews lucky enough to capture Shermans often refused to give them back. Letters from the front described relief. We can fight without wondering if the gearbox will explode. Even the SS 10th Panzer Division's improvised company of 12 captured Shermans ran better than its remaining Panthers. To field officers, the conclusion was inescapable. A tank that reliably arrived at the battlefield was worth more than a monster that died on the march. The Sherman's conservative design hid enormous future potential. Its drivetrain, rated for 400 horsepower, later handled 650 without redesign. The heavy M4A3E2 Jumbo used the same mechanical core and held together perfectly. German engineers sneered at such overbuilding until they realized those margins created longevity and upgrade paths their own vehicles lacked. By summer 1944, as Allied forces poured through Normandy, panzer divisions rationed their movements, measuring not fuel but mechanical hours left before inevitable failure. The U.S. Army simply refueled and kept going. Strategic bombing mauled German production. Spare parts vanished. Skilled workers were gone to the front. Quality dropped until even new-built Panthers arrived defective. American production, untouched and fully supplied, ran like the gearboxes it made. Factories invoked car plant discipline, quality control charts, standardized procedures, relentless testing. Across the Atlantic, Sherman powertrains emerged from Ford and Chrysler lines, indistinguishable whether built in Michigan or California. Every bolt the same thread, every gear swappable. It was manufacturing symmetry Germany had never achieved. Numbers ended the argument. A Panther engine, after urgent redesigns, averaged 700 to 1,000 kilometers before failure. A Sherman diesel exceeded 3,000. Panther operational readiness, often under 50%. Sherman, above 80% across theaters. Those percentages meant life or death. A battalion with 4 dozen working Shermans could move, fight, and exploit breakthroughs. A battalion with 2 dozen working Panthers stayed grounded fixing transmissions. By 1945, the German army quietly acknowledged defeat in its engineering war. Internal reports recorded hundreds of failed final drives, 500 in Panzer IVs, 370 in Panthers, 100 in Tigers, before the last offensive even began. Crews abandoned tanks out of sheer distrust. Kummersdorf rushed to evacuate as Soviet forces advanced. Engineers boxed up data, shipping documents westward. Some captured Shermans were pressed into desperate defensive service outside Berlin. Most German machines never made it to the front line intact. Those anomalies, foreign tanks fighting for Germany in its dying months, ironically outperformed their masters' designs. They ran until out of fuel, not until broken. After the war, Allied examinations confirmed what the Germans had already found. Many wrecked Panzers weren't burnt-out victims. They died of heart failure. Gearboxes seized, engines overheated, drives cracked. The obsessive chase for theoretical perfection had sabotaged practical reality. When West Germany rebuilt its military, designers of the Leopard 1 read those archived Kummersdorf tests. They highlighted the same truths: reliability, maintainability, standardization. Their new tank embraced them all and became one of the most successful of the Cold War. The Shermans tested in 1943 had unknowingly influenced post-war German doctrine. War Daddy 2 was more than a captured trophy. It was a mechanical philosopher's stone proving industrial maturity beats engineering ego. American designers focused on what worked in real conditions. German designers chased scary statistics. In war, the tool that functions on demand always wins. Germany entered World War II with dazzling technical brilliance but shallow manufacturing roots. The United States entered with workaday machinery and an economy built to build. America's auto industry already understood mass reliability. When converted for war, that experience became unstoppable momentum. Production lines delivered tanks, planes, jeeps, and artillery faster than Axis planners could calculate. By late 1944, America maintained civilian prosperity, supported Allied Lend-Lease, and still outproduced every opponent combined. The outcome wasn't mystical, it was mechanical arithmetic. A tank 80% ready fights. One 40% ready doesn't. Reliability is combat power. In Kummersdorf's records, War Daddy 2 stands as an accidental teacher. A machine that told its captors exactly why they would lose. Each kilometer it rolled without failure shouted the same message: to win a modern war, you must build weapons ordinary people can operate, repair, and trust. The Germans saw that truth, documented it meticulously, and still couldn't act on it. The Americans had been living it for decades every time they built a car. That is why the Sherman's invisible advantage, its mechanical reliability, helped win the largest war in history.